السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. جزاكم الله خير, my dear respect brothers and sisters. I hope all of you are doing great, and I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless this gathering and make this gathering for His sake. Brothers and sisters, as we continue our mission with the book of Imam al-Qayyim, Ad-Da' wa Dawa, the Disease and the Cure, we still have not finished to talk about the effect of the sins in our lives. And today, Imam al-Qayyim, he talks about the punishment of the sin, and the punishment of the sin can be something, uh, uh, you know, done by destiny or done by a religion or shari. Brothers and sisters, you have to understand that one of the worldly effect of the sin, that it kills the heart, it kills the spiritual heart. And as we know, there are certain sins cause spiritual diseases and spiritual sickness of the heart. And the more someone would sin, the more this disease will become more more deep inside of the heart. Brothers and sisters, the heart, there are certain things in the heart, that in the spiritual heart, that is, that could revive it, that could support it, that could feed it. And there are certain things in the spiritual heart that could make it sick, that could make it worse, and could make it more dark. Brothers and sisters, for instance, there are three things that Imam al-Qayyim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala believes him, he said, that would revive the spiritual heart. He said one of them is doing good deeds. When someone help others, when he worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he smiles, when he obey his parents, when he keep his mouth silent, when he do anything that is considered to be good, that's a good deed that revives the heart. That's one. The other thing that could also revive the heart, he said, tawbah, going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because tawbah is as if he is emptying the sin inside of the heart. He described the tawbah, or seeking forgiveness, as someone emptying the sin from the heart. So another way to revive the spiritual heart is tawbah. And this is something that need to be done frequently, depending on the individual, how much sins this person commits. The third thing, he called it al-himya, protecting yourself from committing sins, and that's by by doing anything and putting barriers between you and committing the sin. Like, for instance, I know if I go to this place, I'm going to commit a sin, that I put a barrier between me and that sin. So these three things: doing good deeds, seeking forgiveness, and seeking protection. He called this, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he said, this is what taqwa is. This is how to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing these three things, in which that you would do good deeds. And the more good deeds that you do, the more your heart would revive. If you seek tawbah, you would empty the sins out of your heart. And if you seek protection, seek anything that will protect your heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would further revive your heart. Imagine, brothers and sisters, as you are looking at a piece of cloth, a piece of white cloth. How to keep this cloth white? First of all, you have to continue to wash. You have to make sure that you wash it, and this is tawbah, right? You continually wash it. Okay, you have to protect it. Okay, you have to protect it, in which that you would have to from time to time, you have to expose it to dust. Okay, and doing good deeds, in which that you for instance, you put perfume on it, or you polish it from time to time. So this is the way. The same you would apply to a piece of white cloth, the same thing would apply to a white heart, in which that the spiritual heart, in which that you would have to do good deeds. You seek tawbah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and protecting it from any harm. And for a sick heart, he's doing the opposite of these three things. having a sick heart, he is doing the opposite of these things. One, he's not seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, his heart continue to darken. Second, he doesn't do good deeds. Rather, he's committing sins. So therefore, his heart will further darken. And third thing, he's not protecting his heart from committing sins. So that what happened, he's always indulged in doing other things until his heart would further darken, and until these sins will continue to pile up until the heart is completely dead. And when you have a dead heart, this would affect in the attitude of the person, the function of the person, the way he behaves, the way he deals with others, and the spiritual, the person is dead spiritually. And that's why you see people are depressed, and people are not doing well, and they're anxious, and you see nothing working in their life. Even that they could have all the worldly means for things, money, etc., whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, these some of the punishments, the spiritual punishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would cast on someone who is committing sins. Brothers and sisters, if these worldly punishment does not work, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might for instance send inflict an individual with a spiritual sickness. He's become depressed, anxious. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may possibly punish punish him by worldly means, earthquake or a tornado or etc. So all these are what we call worldly punishments. If these does not prevent the person or does not make the person wake up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also made religious punishments. Like for instance, in Islam, there are certain punishment to certain actions. Like for instance, if someone steals, there is a punishment of cutting the hands. If someone commits zina, there is either a capital punishment, or if he's married, or 100 lashes. If somebody made a false witnessing against a female, then it's a 80 lashes. If someone, for instance, have drink alcohol or etc. So or if someone have committed fornication or etc. So there is a punishment. So there is two kind of punishments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made. There are a worldly punishment and there is a religious punishments. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made these religious punishments part of the wisdom, so people would prevent people from committing these sins. And subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made these punishments on things that seduces an individual, would a person would be inclined to do. Like for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to have not made a punishment for someone who eats dirt, because that's naturally something that someone would do. But like for instance, but there is a punishment for someone who is when someone attack a woman, when someone rape, when someone committed zina, when someone steals, when someone rob, when someone kills. All these things have punishment, because people sometimes, because of their bad desires, are sometimes can be inclined to do these horrible things. You see, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made these punishment to further protect the society and protect individuals from learning a way for them to learn lessons, so they would not commit it again. And for subhanallah, like people say, oh, what is and how, maybe you say killing someone is bad, robbing someone is bad, but why would for instance, something like adultery would be harmful? No, brothers and sisters, one of the horrible things that adultery can do to society, it affects progeny. Like for instance, you would not know whose father is who. You would not know who's responsible who, and that's why a lot of times you see in some Western societies, you don't know you don't know the father of that kid. You don't know him, and that's why a lot of these kids unfortunately end up living in a single parent household, and all of us know the dramatic effect of the single parent household. Crimes could come out of this. Low income could come out of this. Literacy rate is very low. Drug addiction, etc. So you see how what the effect of all these things can come from someone when committing adultery. And also, the effect of killing babies, abortion, and the effect of tarnishing someone's reputation. When someone commit a zina, he's tarnishing his reputation and the reputation of the female. She's not as honorable as she used to be before. you know and this is something that people nowadays maybe might not care about this, but this is something that is in the great in the sight of the of society, if they look at things in the right perspective. So so this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made a balance between these two things: a worldly punishment or a religious punishment. And Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, what he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish someone with both punishments. Like, for instance, if there is if the religious punishment is being administered, you're not going to see a worldly punishment. And as soon as the religious punishment is not being administered or applied to the people, this is when the worldly punishment would inflict inflict society. And that's why you see nowadays a lot of earthquakes, a lot of tornadoes, a lot of natural, quote unquote, natural disasters. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who's most deserving. We cannot judge, but at the end of the day, this is the balance between the two. This is the balance when you don't apply the religious law or the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, the worldly punishments would come in to teach the people, or to make the people wake up and go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why, brothers and sisters, not all the sins in Islam are the same level. There is, and not all the punishments are the same. Like, for instance, there is punishment of amputation. There is a punishment of capital punishment. There is a punishment of lashing people. Not all the punishments are the same. And the more severe the sin or the harm to society, the more severe the punishment is in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why Imam Ahmad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Imam Ahmad, what he said, لا أعلم بعد القتل ذنبا أعظم من الزنا. He's like, I cannot see anything worse than killing someone. And after killing someone, the worst thing that could come after it is what? Is adultery, because of dramatic effect that we talked about, brothers and sisters. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned this, and the effect of these things in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ وَلَا يَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. Look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this. He said, and those who do not associate anything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those who do not kill the innocent soul, and those who cannot commit zina. So look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made them in order, from higher to lower. The worst thing that someone could do is leave Islam, negate the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, deny the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second thing after that is what? Is killing an innocent soul. And then the third thing after that is committing an adultery. And that's why, and even within each category, not all the sins are the same. Like, for instance, the worst type of shirk, is what? Is when you are making associating someone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's all types of shirk. There is shirk al-akbar, shirk al-asghar, the greater shirk and the lower shirk. And like, for instance, having ill intention, showing off, that's considered to be a lower shirk. But the highest level of shirk, the highest level of associating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that when you worship something with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the highest shirk. And the highest form of killing an innocent one is that when you kill your child out of fear of provision. That's the highest form of killing. You kill your own child because you're fearing, you're not going to be able to provide for him. That's because that's a great in the sight of Allah. You're killing your own child. That's a disaster. And also when it comes to zina, not all zina have the same level. Zina, adultery, like, for instance, the highest level or the highest form of adultery is when someone commit an adultery with his neighbor. because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have made rights with our neighbors. Imagine if someone, above, instead of taking care of your neighbor, instead of honoring your neighbor, instead of protecting your neighbor, you go about and then you commit adultery with the wife of your neighbor. Subhanallah Rabbil Alamin. That's considered to be the highest level of adultery is when someone. Imagine if your neighbor, for instance, is someone who's related to you. It becomes even higher. If someone, if committing adultery is haram, committing adultery with your neighbor is even more haram. Committing adultery with a neighbor who is related to is becomes even more haram. You know, subhanallah. And committing adultery with your neighbor who is married, because sometimes your neighbor could not be married. You could have a female neighbor. It becomes even more haram. And that's why Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لا يدخل الجنة من لا يأمن جاره بواقه. He said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make someone enter Jannah who his neighbor does not, he fear his harm. Subhanallah, he does not enter Jannah as someone who's his neighbor fear his harm. Allahu Akbar. That tells you the beauty of Islam and how Islam protect the rights of the people and how Islam honor the neighbor, even if it was a non-Muslim, that we should be honoring them and respecting them and taking care of them. And imagine if some brother or sister, this your neighbor, he have left his house because he went to prayer. It becomes even a higher sin. Or someone who went out to fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes even more higher. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bring this person in the hereafter, and his neighbor who he has committed adultery with his wife, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bring his neighbor and tell him, take as much hasanat as you want from you in the hereafter. Imagine if your neighbor was, for instance, again, was someone who is related to you, even becomes even more higher. Imagine if you committed this sin in a sacred land, like for instance, al-balad al-haram, like Mecca or Medina, it becomes even more higher. Imagine if you committed this sin in a righteous time, or a time of prayer, it becomes even more higher. Imagine if you commit this in a month that is sacred, like a Shahr al-Haram, it becomes even more higher. So subhanallah, sins in Islam not all the same level, and they have different levels. And brothers and sisters, we have to understand that not all the sins are the same, and there are certain things and certain conditions could make the sin greater in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from committing all these horrible things of harming people, killing people, and not honoring the honor of our neighbors and the honor of people who surround us. That's something great in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember, brothers and sisters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have balance between the religious punishment and the worldly punishments. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from either one. And the only way for us to do this for us by to be more observant of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks of us. Jazakumullah khair. لاستماعكم سبحانك وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب اليك والعصر ان الانسان لفي خسر الا الذين عملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.